Okay, so over the last 24 hours, almost everyone has been having a paradigm shift where they realize that they should no longer be prompting their agents, but instead prompting and designing loops that in turn prompt their agents for them. Now, this was started last week because Boris Cherny said this in an interview.
Now it's actually leveled up, I think, again to the next wave of abstraction where I don't prompt Claude anymore. I have loops that are running. They're the ones that are prompting Claude and kind of figuring out what to do. My job is to write loops.
And then this was repeated again by the creative OpenClaw saying that you should be designing loops that prompt your agents. Now, what's causing a lot of frustration with people is that no one has taught folks how to do this. It feels both evidently the future and also somehow gatekept. So I'll be focusing on the higher level picture and then going through a few examples inside of this video. Now, before getting started, I want to quickly mention that I have been teaching this for over 3 months inside of my masterclass. So I made a bunch of videos about this back in February, and I'm still making more. And I have been running loops pretty much every single day. So for example, I ran this loop that ran for about 19 hours and verified over 500 different user flows inside of my new application. And then I ran another loop after that basically fixed a whole bunch of the issues that the previous loop identified over the course of 11 hours. Now, before reaching this level, let's quickly go back to where we were. So about 2 years ago, we were hand coding with AI autocomplete. So we would be writing in like a line of code and then it would complete the function for us. And then about 1 year ago, 6 months ago, we started juggling many different agents together. So you've probably seen people with like 6 different agent windows open and they're jumping between each of them, prompting one after another, but they're still inside of the loop of each agent actually prompting each one individually. Now, most people are at stage 2, and if you're at that stage and completely happy with that, then you can end the video right now. But if you want to move on to stage 3, kind of like Boris, then you got to be writing loops. Now, Boris has a couple of different loops that he mentioned in the video. He didn't go into too much detail about it, but he has some that look through GitHub, find any issues, flag those issues, and make any fixes. He has other ones that go through Slack and identify what other people are doing. And then he also has some that go through Twitter as well, different agents running on a loop that kind of decides what to build next for Claude Code. Now, to give you a really simple example of a loop that I have running is a scheduled task where every 24 hours, it looks through Sentry, identifies any issues affecting more than 20 users, and then automatically creates a brand new PR fixing that particular issue. And besides Claude Code routines, we've seen this in a couple of different ways. So we have the /loop command inside of Claude Code. We also have /goal, which I made a previous video about inside of Codex and Claude Code. So what I showed you previously where Claude Code tested over 300 user flows over 19 hours, that was a /goal. And in the case of that loop, I had Claude Code automatically do a screen recording for every single user flow that it tested, and it stored it all into a folder over here. So I can just watch through all the recordings and make sure that it did a good job. So here is one of the recordings that it did, where it's basically testing out this like lead collection modal. We have also seen this in the form of Andrei Karpathy's auto research, where we have a loop optimizing some code and then scoring it against a benchmark. And if the optimization led to a better result, it would keep it. If not, it would discard it. And interestingly enough, Microsoft have also applied the same idea of like, what if instead of changing code, we changed agent skills instead and had self-improving agent skills. I'll have a separate video about this coming soon, so do stay subscribed for that. But I have also been using auto research quite a lot recently in the form of /goal, whereby I was basically optimizing Gemma 4 to run locally on my machine, and you can see that it tried a whole bunch of things, and then it kept what worked and reverted what didn't work. And then we saw this in a different form in January by having the Ralph loop, so we would break down a big task into many small tasks, and then do each in a brand new context window. But the same principle still applies, whereby we have some kind of trigger, and that can be a prompt, a time of day, or like an event happening at a data source. We would have some kind of variation running, and that could be a goal /loop, auto research, a Ralph loop. We would check whether it's done, and if it's not done, then it would basically repeat again. Okay, now let's go for a more concrete example of something you may have been doing until now. So you may have worked back and forth with a coding agent to come up with a spec, and once you have that ready, you then tell the agent like, hey, implement this for me, please, and this would be your prompt. And then after it's implemented, you may say like do /code review, or you may have another code review skill. So we already have one inside of Claude Code, which is /code review, and it would spin up a bunch of subagents and find any issues with the implementation. And then next up, you would prompt it and be like, hey, fix these issues for me. so fix these issues for me. And then after it's fixed the issues, you may do another code review, and you may kind of like go back and forth between these two stages 2 or 3 times until you're happy. Then you may have prompted it again, being like run the tests, open like Claude in Chrome, for example. And then it would open Claude in Chrome, test it out, do everything for you, maybe record some like screen recordings for you to check later. And then for anything that's broken, it would then fix those issues again. So you can see right now we already have 2 loops happening that you're kind of doing manually and you're driving manually. So we have this loop over here of the code review fix going back and forth. And then we have another loop over here of the verification like fix going back and forth. And then you would say something like open and merge PR. And then you may prompt your agent after the PR has been merged, saying something like /loop 2 minutes, check for errors. So like check if there are any increase in errors because this feature has now been merged. And then if it identified as some kind of error, you may have prompted it being like, okay, cool, fix this error for me. So you can see in this white text, this is where you're prompting Claude Code, Codex every single time. And then when it fixes the error, it may go back over to the implementation stage, right all the way over here. So you can see this is now a bigger loop that's happening. Now, if you have been doing something like this until now, you were in the middle of a manual loop, and a unit of work for you was the prompt itself. But now if we're moving on stage 3, we want to have a unit of work being the loop itself rather than just a prompt. So we have an input, and then it goes through the cycle that we just showed, and then it makes an output, which can be a merged PR and some screen recordings that you can be confident to know the feature works. So essentially this entire process over here should be one big loop instead. So we have some smaller loops which are inside of this bigger loop, and our input to a loop over here is a spec that we will still write ourselves because we want to kind of decide how a feature should look. And then the output of the loop here would be a screen recording with a merged PR to show the feature works as intended. And this is exactly what the big labs are talking about. We should be designing a system kind of like this, a loop which is now a single unit of work. So all of this here is now a unit of work. And of course, you don't have to design a loop like this alone. You can design it with the help of an agent. So you decide what the inputs would be, which can be a spec, what kind of actions it would take, what kind of checks it would do, where any memory would be stored, when it would exit the loop and decide that it's done, and then where it would surface anything that has been done for you. So that could be by sending you a Telegram message, it could be sending you a message on Slack, or something else. So you can kind of imagine at the very end of this loop over here, our agent sent us a message on Slack with a bunch of screen recordings, and then also the final PR as well for us to read through. Now, I will be releasing a brand new class in my masterclass all about agentic engineering called Loopy AI, and I have been working on this for the last couple of weeks because I noticed that this was going to be the future. So if you want to go into much more detail in a lot of the concepts, then this class will be available on Monday next week. And if you sign up now, then you can get 30% off lifetime. By signing up, you also get access to all the previous videos, about 300 that I made about Claude Code, Codex, a bunch of fundamental and advanced techniques when it comes to using these agents, context engineering, prompt engineering, and a bunch more stuff. Many people have found a lot of what I covered in the class to be many months ahead of the curve, and you may find that too. So the Loopy AI class will be exactly like that, because this is a direction we're going to be seeing going forwards. And finally, for the Loopy AI class, there will be some live office hours that you can bring your questions if you're interested. And there is also a 30-day money-back guarantee if you don't feel satisfied for whatever reason. Now experimenting around, learning a bunch, and then sharing my insights in this class will be my focus for the next couple of months, so if you want to sign up now at a discount, then the link will be down below. Now we want to take this loop to the next level, and that would be by making an outer loop that manages the inner loop. So we can kind of imagine it like this. So the inner loop that we defined earlier is basically implementing a spec, but we may want like new specs being regularly delivered to the inner loop to implement. And we could have another loop that is monitoring our competitors. So it automatically goes to our competitor's website, notices any new feature that was added, and then automatically passes this into the inner loop to then implement that feature. So essentially the outer loop to our inner loop could look something kind of like this. We check our competitors' LinkedIn, X, their changelogs every single day to know when they announced a new feature. We then use like browser use or computer use to click around and find out how the feature works. We could also inspect like network logs and stuff like that. And then based on that, we would write a brand new spec being like, hey, we'll implement the same feature ourselves as well. So this could also be another smaller inner loop as well, where we have a good inner loop for writing specs. Then we may have some kind of a human in the loop to approve. And if you do approve it, then you would trigger the inner loop. That would then trigger the entire build for us, this build over here. And if you don't approve it, then it would just wait until tomorrow. Okay, so let's go through 2 more examples of inner loops and outer loops. So you may have an inner loop running /goal to kind of find performance improvements for an ML model that you're working on. And then you would have a outer loop that monitors archive.org every single day for any new strategies that may apply to the ML model you're working on to get better performance. So it could look something kind of like this. Anytime it finds a new strategy, it passes it down to inner loop. And then once the inner loop beats your existing strategy by a certain percentage, then it will notify you on the channel you care about, like Slack. As a non-technical example, let's say you're running some kind of cold email campaign. You may have some kind of inner loop that is doing auto research to improve the email copy on 10% of the list. And that would be asking for feedback, human in the loop, kind of every single day. And then you would have a longer term outer loop that may run every single week, and it monitors a bunch of fake inboxes that you set up to receive campaigns from any competitors in your niche. And that could be feeding into the inner loop to kind of see if it would beat your existing campaigns in a way. Now, every single time a loop runs, it will be stateless, which is why we want to have memory for our loops. Now, this could be some kind of file system or Git, for example. So the loop that I have set up to fix Sentry issues every single day, it knows which ones have already been fixed yesterday because it can just look at the commits from yesterday. But it could also be an external memory layer, kind of like Slack or Airtable. So you may have Airtable set up and then you connect it to your Claude Code schedule routine via the connectors over here. And then when you define your loop inside of the instructions over here, you would tell it, hey, first can you check the Airtable to make sure that we haven't done this before. Now, one thing I personally like to do is to have Slack as a memory layer and a decision surface for many of my longer term loops that would run every day or every week, for example. So I have a channel over here, which is for optimizing my landing page in this project. And then I have many different channels, each belonging to a different loop. Now I have a bot that automatically posts a channel. So this one is analyzing my landing page and being like, hey, these are some of the issues. Here are some of the recommendations I have for fixing them and the uplift by fixing them. So for example, it says, okay, do this. And every time the loop runs, it can see any previous messages that it sent yesterday. And then I can also make decisions from here. So I like this suggestion over here, which is number 4. I can basically right click, do add reaction, choose number 4, and then the next time the loop runs, it will look at the previous message, my reaction to it, and then make that change and automatically send a message to that channel. So this is both a memory layer for the loop because I can see the previous messages, and also a decision surface for me because I can leave reactions, which automatically tell it what it needs to be doing next. Now, memory is really great for our loops because it means that they can compound over time. But one of the problems with that is that we can have our slop compounding as well. So if you don't keep your loops in check, you can just lead to way more slop over time. And this is one of the problems that many people face. And the way that I see it is that entropy is slowly increasing over time anyway. And agents, because they can do a lot of work, basically collapse that into a much shorter time. So the amount of entropy we're facing on a day-to-day basis is much greater than it was 2 years ago. And there are a bunch of things that you can do about it. So for example, you can have outer loops that can kind of ground your inner loop that is increasing entropy in external sources, for example. But one thing that I like to do, especially when it comes to coding, is having adversarial code reviews. So for example, the reason I have this code review in the previous loop redefined over here and the verification step is to reduce the entropy from increasing a lot over time. So ideally, you want some kind of oracle outside of the model. And that could be test passing, the real production errors, Stripe revenue, actual reply rates, for example, that kind of keeps a loop in check and prevents slop from accumulating. Now, the way that Boris kind of talks about this is that loops are the next evolution. So he kind of talks about punch cards being a thing in the 1940s, then we moved up one layer to assembly, and then we moved over to higher level languages like C, and then we moved over to libraries and frameworks like Rails, Next.js, and so forth. And then we moved over to prompts, and now we finally have loops, which are then running our prompts for us. So eventually you stop being the thing that runs, you design the thing that runs, and the leverage moves up one more layer. And I think one thing that we will be seeing over the next couple of months is having loops that check up on your work and your loops to find opportunities for future loops. So it's kind of like having a meta loop. So for example, when making this loop, you may give it access to everything inside of your organization, as well as the ability to view existing loops. And then it could kind of identify which loops are working and making impacts on the bottom line, which are not working, and then also create new loops for you as well, with your approval, of course. And I don't think we've quite reached the stage where the models have enough taste to decide what should be good loops and not good loops, for example. So maybe it would give you like 10, 20 recommendations, and then you apply your own taste and filter it down, for example. But if you do want to compound over the next couple of months, then this is what you should be thinking about. Now, of course, this can end up using a bunch of tokens if you're not careful and wasting them. So that's why you gotta be mindful of hey, are these tokens actually economically valuable? Are they making a difference to my bottom line for my business over here? So for example, in this situation, I used 4.1 million tokens, but I know these tokens were economically valuable because I will make more money back from the kind of work that was done here than the amount of money that was spent on the tokens. Anyways, if you do like this kind of stuff, then do subscribe to the channel because I only upload videos when I feel like there's something worth saying. And if you do want to stay in the loop, quote unquote, then you can also join my email newsletter that will be linked down below. And remember that if you do want to save money on my Loopy AI class that will be launching next week, then there will be a link down below for that as well.